What's up, everybody? Yes, we're powering through. That's what we're doing. Today is a power through kind of day. It's not easy. It's a bummer, but we will get through it. That's for sure. All right, Gunnar. So a couple things. Let's look at the offense for a minute here last night. And, first half, great. Things look good. They were able to put up some points. There were some big plays made. Second half, completely different story. So, Hurts ends up with 304 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, huge fumble, 15 rushes, 70 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, a 103.4 passer rating. You can add a 2-point conversion there. I'll tell you this. On that 2-point conversion, I didn't think he had any business getting in the end zone. It just shows how strong the guy is.
Dude,
incredible.
I mean, seriously, they stood him up, and now he got a little push from the back, but still, his lower body strength is ridiculous. The way he moved them off that line of scrimmage to get in there. He's not your prototypical quarterback, 6'5", 230, but dude, what he's able to do as an athlete, a lot of stuff he does you can't teach. You work on these things to get better, but it's a God-given talent, some of the abilities that he has. But nobody outworks this dude. This dude works as hard as anybody. He made himself into a frontline quarterback, an elite quarterback in just a year, in 1 year's time. What more could you ask him to do? Did he make the mistake? Try to switch hands, drop the ball, cost him something? Yes. Okay, but you look at the rest of his game, his first time ever in a Super Bowl, the guy played like he had been there before. He made the throws he had to make.
Yep.
He stepped up and ran when he had to run. He picked up the necessary downs when he had to. He got the touchdown. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. Okay. What else do you want from him? You can't ask any more than what you asked of him. And so he made a mistake. Mistakes are part of football. It happens. Okay.
Yeah, and how do you bounce back? And here's what really impressed me about that, Derek. After he makes that mistake, they come right down the field and score. And that's when you kind of understood, like, what this guy's his mental makeup is. He's never going to be someone who's devastated by a mistake, who hangs his head.
Right.
Like, that. The other thing is the moment's not too big. There were people very, very incorrectly who questioned what kind of quarterback this guy was, et cetera. Like morons, like kickers on a team that got eliminated, part of the crybaby, act of 49ers, saying force this guy to throw and, all this other stuff that we heard. You saw what he did in the air. And it wasn't just like, some of it was deep shots. Some of it was putting it up and letting guys like A.J. Brown make plays, trusting him. But others were touch passes. Some of the throws to Goddard, you kind of dropped it between, bracketed coverage and stuff like that. Like, you saw it all on full display last night. The other thing is, it's damn near impossible to stop the quarterback sneak because of how strong he is and the way the Eagles have just mastered it with kind of pushing him from behind. It's a deadly play. It's almost like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar skyhook. It's not stoppable, even though it's coming from back in the day. So that was great. It was great to see him on that stage against a guy who's going to go down as an all-timer, kind of go, at least do his thing, right? The bad is obviously the turnover, and that's 7 points right there that was just gifted to them, or they should have only had 7 points at the half. And the inability to run the ball. Again, Sanders, Gainwell, Scott, 17 rushes, 45 yards. That's 2.7 yards per carry. So you became very one-dimensional. If it wasn't Jalen running, you weren't getting any kind of effective run offense at all. And that's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that was a calling card of them all year. They were able to run the ball. I mean, they ran the ball 88 times the last 2 games in the playoffs leading up to this game.
I got to watch the game again because I want to see what Kansas City did to take away the running lanes. Something that the 49ers defense couldn't. The 49ers were the number 1 defense. Now, granted, they were exhausted. They were on the field so much. I get that. But the Giants couldn't stop it. The 49ers couldn't stop it. What did Kansas City do differently to plug the gaps and not give them? Because there were a lot of times when you were waiting for Miles or Boston Scott to turn up and hit the hole, they had to bounce it outside a little further, try to stretch it, because there was nothing in the middle of the field. So what did Spagnuolo see and do to take away that from them? Because you're right. They ran at will against most opponents in the National Football League all season long. They dared you to stop it, and then they embarrassed you by still running it down your throat. But for some reason, they could not. And Kansas City is not a great run defense. And yet, for this particular game, Kansas City stepped up and shut down their run. Now they could do very little with Hurts on the run on the quarterback runs. I get that. You know, no matter what you try to do, sometimes you can't account for that, especially when motion is flowing one way and the quarterback's going back the other way because you got a gaping seam there. But Kansas City did an incredible job of bottling up their running game. You know, when you look at how bad the running game was, you know, the backup running back outplayed the starting running back. Gainwell by far outplayed Miles Sanders. Yeah, but still, it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. Boston Scott outplayed Miles Sanders.
You
know, and I don't understand it for the life of me. How did they stonewall that running attack that easily? I really don't. I'm waiting the whole second half. Outside of Hurts, I'm waiting that Miles is going to break one soon. Gainwell's about to break one, like he did weeks before. Never came. It never came. It's like
I feel like we were waiting for that on both sides of the ball, Derek. Like we were sitting there like, okay, when are they going to be able to start to enforce their will running the ball? Or when was a big run going to be broken off on that side? And then the other side is, when's the sack coming? When's the strip sack? When's the interception? When are they going to get that turnover? You know, the thing about Mahomes is, as great as he is, he will throw interceptions.
He will.
He had 12 on the season. When is that going to happen? When's it going to happen? And it never happened. You know, Kansas City played a clean game. The Eagles did not. And they had two major flubs, the fumble and the punt return. And, you know, there's a lot of things we can look at, and we've laid it out for the first, hour and 40 minutes that we've been doing the show. But those two things, it's impossible to get around it. Those two mistakes.
The closest they got to sacking Mahomes was the play where he stepped up in the pocket. I don't know who had him, but he's falling to the ground. He flips the ball to the middle of the field. And Kelsey picks it up off the turf.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's about as demoralizing as it gets right there. But that's the closest they got to getting Mahomes on one leg to the ground the entire game. Every time, and we went into this game talking about how the edge rushers cannot attack him by looping around. And how many times did Mahomes step up in the pocket because here comes Hassan Reddick trying to loop around Wiley? Didn't work. On the other side, Josh Sweat with a wide loop. All he did was step up and buy a few more seconds and burned him on it. I thought the edge rushers were very undisciplined in terms of how they were attacking him or in terms of how Jonathan Gannon told him to attack him. We all knew going into this game, you cannot loop around. You have to come at a direct angle on Patrick Mahomes and keep him bottled up. You cannot let that man step up and slide one way or the other. He did it at will. Again, another part of no adjustments ever made in that game. You know, but their running game, and I'm sure Sirianni and those guys are going to look at it over and over and over again. The blocking assignments were not there. Kansas City was beating them off the snap. Every time a running back got the ball and tried to flood one way or the other side, Kansas City had men coming. They had men coming in a hurry. And at some point I'm thinking, why not run more bootlegs? Even try bootlegs. And Sirianni didn't even go to bootlegs in this game.
Yep.
You know, every team uses the bootleg play. Sirianni never even used it in this game. And I don't understand why. If you're heavily pursuing in that regard, you got to catch him. You got to catch him at least once to make him back up. Never caught him. They never forced Kansas City to play out of their game. Never.
Yeah, it felt like I kept saying to myself, what did they do these 2 weeks? You know, what did they do with all this extra time to prepare? What did they do with the 35-minute halftime? If you want to just hone it down to that. Meanwhile, Kansas City makes all kinds of adjustments. They're able to Andy stays true to the run, something we always knocked them for. The clock is managed perfectly. You know, you name it. And the Eagles weren't good leading in, or at least specifically halftime making the adjustments, and or they weren't good in game, just saying basically, like after as I mentioned earlier, the first two drives of Kansas City, you're like, I got to do something else. You know, or, you know, how can we be more successful here with the ball? I mean, they ended up scoring 11 points in the second half. That was it. They had the late drive where they scored and got the 2-point conversion, and they had a field goal, and that was it. You know, they put up a 24 spot in the first half.
Yeah.
So and part of that was they didn't have the ball much, and they didn't have possessions and time and all that. I get it. But it was just across the board. You're saying to yourself, is that it? Like, you don't have any kind of counter punch here to what this guy's doing or these guys are doing to you? Nothing.
Yeah. You got outcoached. Sirianni, Steichen got outcoached.
Flat out.
Plain and simple. Spagnuolo outcoached him. I think there was a fear factor on both sides of the ball. I think the Eagles got a little bit too conservative in the second half. Let's just try to protect the lead and hold on to this thing. They were too methodical, and as I said off the top of the show, way too methodical in their drive where they got the tying touchdown. It was like they weren't certain about what they wanted to do. They weren't in a great position in the final minutes in terms of timeouts because they had to burn timeouts, you know, and all of this came home to roost on them. You know, it's a great learning. Well, it's amazing, but it just goes to show you how this game is so unpredictable. You look at a Doug Peterson goes into a Super Bowl with depleted weapons, and they find a way to beat a dominant team like New England. And here the Eagles were the dominant team. They go into a game against a banged-up Kansas City team with a bunch of young players, and they choked on the big stage. One thing we haven't talked about, they signed Nick Fangio to a 2-week contract. He's supposed to be this defensive guru.
Yep.
How much did he play into the failure of this defense as well? What did he tell Gannon that he should do? Because he was a head coach at Denver. He faced Patrick Mahomes twice a season. So obviously he knew something about what Andy Reid likes to do, and he knew, Mahomes' tendencies. What the heck did he tell Gannon that Gannon did or did not do in this game? Now, Vic Fangio is this defensive guru, okay?
Right.
Got a job waiting for him in Miami. Before he goes to Miami, so I'll help you guys out. What help did he give him?
I don't know. I find that whole thing strange. Like, if I'm Miami, I'm like, what's going on, man? You know, what are you doing? You know, like, I'm sure this was in the works, you know, long before he signed officially with the Dolphins. I still find it strange. You know, I guess you could to an extent look at it and say no stone unturned, how he'll do anything to try and get an edge. So I'm not going to like knock it necessarily, but yeah, I mean, I saw no innovation. I saw no, you know, advantage to someone who knows intimately what Kansas City likes to do. I saw none of that. In fact, they reverted. Like, this is the worst the defense has looked. Really? I mean, if I think back, Dallas was bad Christmas Eve, but they didn't have CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? Or Avante, right? They didn't have either one of those guys, I believe.
Yeah.
They didn't have Dallas Goedert. That's the other side of the ball. But anyway, as healthy as they were, this is probably the worst they look since, I guess, maybe like week 1 against Detroit, where Detroit was able to move the ball a lot on them. Yeah, and again, some of that is you're playing Patrick Mahomes, man. Like, you're playing Andy Reid. You know, everybody struggles. They're the number 1 scoring offense for. I get all that.
I see Rob's going through Wi-Fi issues. What? Hey, Xander, is Rob having Wi-Fi issues again, or is it me?
You got to step up your game. You were able to step up your game when you beat. Gotcha. I'm here.
Are you still there?
I'm here. Hi.
All right, you've been going in and out, so I don't know if that's me or if that was you.
I don't know that time. I'm working off my hotspot. I got everything. I'm trying everything, man. I'm trying. No, I was saying, like, you picked the wrong time for probably your worst collective effort. And some of that is the Chiefs, but some of that is you. You know, in the last Super Bowl, you figured it out with backups in certain spots, and you upped your game. The Eagles didn't up their game. Certainly they didn't for 60 minutes. Maybe they did for 30.
I screamed on the postgame show that this defense showed Mahomes and that offense too much respect. You don't show respect to an opponent when you're trying to win that Vince Lombardi trophy. You go out and you try to demoralize that opponent. Now, it was the best matchup you could have this season. You had the two best teams. The last time two number one seeds faced off in the Super Bowl was back in 2017 when it was the Eagles and the Patriots. So you had the two best teams. You had the number one, number three offenses. You had a stout Eagles defense against an okay Chiefs defense. The Chiefs stepped up on both sides of the ball. They showed no fear whatsoever of this vaunted Eagles pass rush, this vaunted Eagles run defense. I thought Gannon, coupled with Vic Fangio, showed way too much respect for what was across from them. Because let's face it, yeah, it starts with Patrick Mahomes, but he had average receivers at best. He had decent running backs, but not great. You don't go up and challenge them. Who's Juju Smith-Schuster, a cast-off from Pittsburgh? Who's Kadarius Toney, a cast-off from the Giants? Who's Marcus Valdez-Scantling, a cast-off from Green Bay? It's not like they were the frontline players. They're not even considered the top 15, top 20 receivers in the game. Mm-hmm. But you paid them that kind of homage. You showed them that kind of respect. You don't get up in their faces the entire game. You had Bradbury. You had Slay. You had Maddox. You had CJ. You had the best secondary in football on the field. The best quartet of secondary and Epps. The best secondary numbers that you could possibly have across the board. You played like you were afraid of them. You played scared. This concept of keeping everything in front of me, you kept everything in front of you. The problem was you let them move down the field on you. You let them do exactly what Mahomes does, dink and dunk his way down the field. You didn't take him off his routes. You didn't take him off his rhythm. You didn't take him off his stride. You let him do whatever he wanted to do back there. You had two different halves to adjust to this, to give him something, but you played the same brand of football for 60 minutes. Did you think somebody like Mahomes and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy were not going to figure this thing out?
Yeah, you're right, Derek, and you bring a good point because there's respect and then there's fear. And you can respect an opponent and then you take it to a certain degree and then you're playing scared. And it felt like to me, and I know that's been the knock on Gannon all year, is he doesn't play aggressive enough and there's a bit of a fear factor and all that. In my defense was always, hey, he doesn't give up big plays and look at the sack totals and all that. Right. I'm not defending anything last night. Okay. But yeah, like at some point you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone and throw caution to the wind. And I just felt like last night he was like, this is what we do. This is what you're going to go with the person who brung you to the dance, so to speak. And it didn't work. And at some point you gotta go to plan B. And he was too late on the switch. And here's the other thing. Some of this, I'm going to lay on Sirianni. Dude, you're the head coach. You don't like what's going on that side of the ball? Tell him to blitz a little bit more. Tell him to change things up a little bit. You ultimately are the one who makes the call here. He's your coordinator. He works for you. So I don't care if you feel like you're Bigfooting the guy. Go Bigfoot him. Because you were getting bled to death last night by 1,000 cuts.
You had an offensive coordinator to run your offense. You alleviated that role so you could focus on more aspects of the overall game. And you're absolutely right, Rob. How are you not in your defensive coordinator's face? Can you come up and blitz this dude anything to disrupt the timing? Can you do something? And I don't know if Nick, obviously we didn't see enough sideline shots in the game to know whether or not they had that conversation or not, but I would have been screaming at my defensive coordinator. What in the world are you doing? Can you do something different to come after this guy? Do you understand who we're playing right now?
Yeah.
They're walking up and down the field on us. Do you understand what we're doing here? You've got to find a way to get in his face, to throw his receiver, get your corner, get your Pro Bowl secondary. I mean, think about it, Rob. That whole secondary is Pro Bowl caliber.
No doubt.
And that includes Avante. Avante is identified as one of the best slot corners in the game. CJ, one of the best safeties in the game. You got two of the best so-called cornerbacks in the game. And Marcus Epps is an up-and-comer.
Who can lock guys up one-on-one.
He can lock guys up. Did you see him lock
anything up? And the
up?
receiving core is not – there's no Tyree Hill out there.
No. Did you see him lock up anybody? How many times did you see them come up and play press coverage compared to Kansas City's guys playing it the entire game? Very few. I don't know what the numbers are, but very few. I'd be surprised if it was more than 12, 15 times. I'd have been in the guy's faces. Why are you so afraid that a guy gets past you? Kansas City wasn't, and they paid for it. They paid for it. They got deep shotted. You know, that ball Jalen Hurts threw to AJ for that touchdown. He threw it in coverage.
Yeah, let his guy go make a play.
Let his guy go make a play, dude. It's what you got to do. And
yeah, all right. So let's look at a positive here. The shame of it offensively is Devontae Smith, I thought, and took some hellacious hits, by the way, along the way. But 7 catches, 100 yards, 14.3 yards per catch. You know, and the shame of it is I thought it was really borderline, the one on the sideline, you know, whether it was going to be overturned or not. And it was overturned. It was ruled not a catch. It was really close. I thought because they called it initially a catch, there was, you know, generally when that's the case and it's really close like that, you get the play, but they didn't get the play. So we could have had even more because that was a big one.
Well, then on top of that, the Eagles try to line up quickly like they did against the 49ers and call the next play. Referee stopped play saying Kansas City didn't have a chance to make substitutions.
And it was their error. It was the officiating error. Yeah.
So while they're debating it,
you know, that's a great point there. Yeah.
While they're debating it, gives Andy Reid and his crew more time to decide to challenge it. And sure enough, they did.
Yep. That was a killer. I'll give you the other one under the radar a little bit. The false start on Seumalo, the play before Hurts fumbles.
Yes.
Because you're lined up to get your prototypical, you know, quarterback sneak, boom, you're going to get it, right? You get that. They weren't stopping you. You probably go down the field and score. It's a 14-point swing due in large part to that penalty, which jammed you up and put you back. I'm not excusing Jalen. He's obviously the one who fumbled it. But if Seumalo doesn't, you know, have that false start, that could change everything right there. It's the little, you know, minutia there, the details, if you will, that just kill you.
You know, Roger Goodell came out and said at his press conference at the Super Bowl, the officiating this season was the best it's ever been. And we talked about officiating all season long, and I understand why he defends his guys, but that is as big a fallacy as there is in terms of the officiating. There were so many missed calls throughout the course of the season, and not just with the Eagle games, but other games we watched as well. So many questionable calls. And I understand he's going to defend his guys because if he says they need work, obviously that's going to blow up across the league. But there were several huge mistakes in the game yesterday, and it cost the Eagles. And it seemed like they were all on the Eagles also, you know. And I know people are saying the league is fixed and the refs helped the Chiefs win this game. We'll never know that for sure. But think about it. All the questionable calls in the game were on the Eagles, not Kansas City. It was on the Eagles.
I mean, the only one the Eagles got was the Miles Sanders, that was, you know, right on the border.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, you're right. And it's just frustrating. You just don't want to notice them in big games, you know, more than anything else. You just hope that they're not, you know, noticeable. But they were very noticeable, you know, that's for sure, in that game. And
when you get to this game, you're supposed to have the best of the best. It's like the NBA finals, Major League Baseball finals. You have the best crew, the crew that's graded out the highest to officiate a game of this magnitude. And if that was their best crew, this league's got issues. You got issues. You got big issues.
All right. Let's do this. Let's come back and let's discuss the future of Steichen, who's interviewing with the Colts today, the future of Gannon, who's interviewing with the Cardinals. Throw Michael Clay in there, because I'm not so sure Michael Clay is going to survive this thing either, especially after that punt last night. So we'll dive into that. We'll get into the anthem. We'll get into halftime. Nick Sirianni crying, very emotional pregame. The whole nine. We'll dive into all the sort of pomp and circumstance, commercials, everything that went on during Super Bowl 57. He's Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network, with you on this Monday. All right, let's talk a little bit of Razer Technology and data estate. Data is everywhere in business, but when it's locked away in silos, it can't be efficiently used, and businesses don't have the time to wait for the insights that shape decision-making. Razer Technology's data management not only integrates data from whenever it's generated or wherever it's generated or collected, but provides a uniform structure for storing, interpreting, and distributing it to decision makers. Razer helps businesses transform and model their data, use it to populate real-time dashboards, and create shareable reports that highlight key areas of progress as well as warning signs in need of attention. Smart data analytics and the tools that make data analytics insights make them easily digestible to help businesses of all sizes and types discover where they could be untapping significant savings. Razer Technology can help you break down your silos and fully realize the value of your data to drive growth for your business. To learn more, contact Razer Technology today at 866-797-3282, 866-797-3282, or visit them online at razor-tech.com. That's razor-tech.com.